So I just got back from the beautiful city of Vancouver where I got to spend a day with Hyundai's new IONIQ 6 EV. And I did bring back a little bit of a souvenir in the form of the flu, but that's okay because the trip was completely worth it. We took the IONIQ 6 from downtown Vancouver all the way up into the mountains and back, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about the car in that brief time frame. First, let's talk about how this car looks. When I first saw it in the marketing pictures, I didn't really like it at all. The rear end looked like a weird Porsche 911, and the front looked like an Elantra with the missing front bumper. But since seeing it in person, I've actually warmed up to it quite a lot. The car looks smart on the road. It almost looks like a unique luxury sedan. The few people that we talked to on the streets of Vancouver seem to really like it as well. From the front quarter angle, you can see just how aggressively it slopes into the rear, which does unfortunately give it a little bit of an egg shape, but I'd imagine it was done for aerodynamic efficiency. This car has a 0.22 coefficient of drag, which is incredibly low, and that reflects very well in the range of the car, which we're going to talk about later. Everywhere you look, this car has elements that were designed to help lower that drag coefficient, from the real aero holes that direct air from the front bumper past these 20-inch aero wheels to the relatively strange double wing in the back. Similarly to the IONIQ 5, the 6 also has those motorized pop-out door handles that are flush to the sides of the car to, again, reduce drag. Another element that they've carried over from the IONIQ 5 is that pixel theme that's present throughout the car. They're here across this huge taillight bar. They're in the reflectors and the reverse lights. They're on the side mirrors, on the front sensors, the signal lights, on the seats, on the steering wheel, and in loads of other places. I love the callback to the 90s era with the pixels. I think it just looks absolutely fantastic. I think the biggest improvement from the IONIQ 5 to the IONIQ 6 is this interior. They've done a few minor changes here and there that leads to a much better looking interior overall. First of all, it's black. And while I did like the cleanness of the white interior on the 5, there's something more premium about this all black interior. The bezels around the two screens are now black, making the dark mode version of the gauge cluster and infotainment display look much, much better. As far as I can tell, it seems to be the exact same hardware and software as in the IONIQ 5, which is a good thing for sure. Everything is very snappy and responsive. It does also have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support, but just like the IONIQ 5, it only works when it's wired in. There's no wireless connectivity there, unfortunately. Another change between the two IONIQ models is this full center console. They've actually moved all of the buttons that were on the doors and placed them here in the center. Because of that, the door cards have gotten much thinner and more streamlined, and they actually look really nice in my opinion. The lighting in the doors gives this rib texture on the door card a really cool contrasting look. You can also now separate the top of the door and the bottom of the door into different colors via the software, which is neat, I guess. Space inside the IONIQ 6 is pleasantly roomy. Now I'm 6'2" and I could easily fit in the back seat of the car with plenty of room to spare for my knees. Headroom would be a little tight in the back for someone taller than me though, because of that sloping roofline. You've got rear passenger AC vents back here too, along with some USB-C ports, which is great. The IONIQ 6 has a power liftgate, which isn't something you'd find on a lot of sedans these days. And there's some ample room in here for most things that you need to store, like suitcases or grocery bags. Not quite as much room as the IONIQ 5, but given that that's an SUV, that's not surprising. The front trunk is pretty tiny, but there's enough room to fit a small mobile EV charger or something up here. Most of the other interior elements are very similar. Same climate control interface from the IONIQ 5, same gear selector under the right side of the wheel, and a very similar wheel with some slightly different buttons, and most interestingly, light up pixels that actually do a little animation depending on which drive mode you're in. You've got green for eco, white for normal, and then red for sport. As for the driving experience, well, if you've ever gotten the opportunity to drive the IONIQ 5, it will feel very similar. That's because Hyundai is using the exact same powertrain in the 6 that was present in the 5. Now we had the dual motor all-wheel drive Ultimate Edition, so the top of the line model, and it definitely had some pep for your everyday overtaking needs. It's also relatively planted in the corners. It's no track car, you know, but for a sedan, it's very well controlled with minimal body roll. For power figures, you're looking at about 320 horsepower for the dual motor variant, 225 horsepower for the single motor long range variant, and then 149 horsepower for the base model. None of the cars will be crazy fast, but they do have fantastic range. The single motor rear wheel drive long range model has the best range at 581 kilometers or 361 miles for my American friends, which is fantastic. Much better than the IONIQ 5, and a lot of that has to do with that coefficient of drag that we talked about earlier. The version we drove with the huge 20-inch wheels, the dual motors, and some of the heavier premium interior bits will set you back quite a bit range-wise. You're looking at about like 435 kilometers or 270 miles. Now thankfully it uses that same 800-volt charging architecture as the 5, so it can go from 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes if you can find a charger that's fast enough for it, which is a big if, because if you've watched my 4,000 kilometer IONIQ 5 road trip video, you know that charging can be a little bit of a pain depending on where you live. The IONIQ 6 comes well equipped with loads of driving related tech features, most of which can also be found on the 5 as well, like the lane keep assist that will auto steer the car to keep you in the center of the lane, or the side mirror cameras that will turn on to give you a view of your blind spot when your signal light is on. It also has 360-degree parking cameras, which are high resolution and definitely clear enough to get any kind of difficult maneuver done with confidence. Listen, this was a very comfortable car to live in, and despite the relatively polarizing exterior design, I think Hyundai has done a fantastic job here. They took what works from the IONIQ 5, they improved it a bit, and they smushed it into a sedan, and it gets a solid thumbs up from me. Hope you liked the video, thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.